Oh, my mum has some feedback, by the way.
Oh, yes.
You swear too much.
My mother would say the same thing.
Yeah.
What does it mean to have a human in the loop?
Human in the loop.
Human in the loop.
What in the world is a human in the loop?
Being a human in the loop.
AI in the loop. Humans in charge.
Welcome to Human in the Loop. I did want to ask your opinion and thoughts on the recent MIT report, which has kind of taken a bit of a jab at the assumed productivity and gains being made by AI, especially at a company level, citing that too long don't read. It's not doing a huge amount for businesses and their large objectives, but it's doing a lot for individuals. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's the first thing I'll say is it's only one study, right? And it's a reasonably decently researched study, a reasonable amount of data in it. You always have to take any single study as it's another indication of what may or may not be true about the ability of AI to impact business. Surprisingly, I found it aligned with my views and reinforced the things I already believed. I mostly expected that if there was an uplift in efficiency for business, that would not result in a cost saving for business, but would result in a redirection of that saved effort into additional activity. You can sort of see this in other significant and transformative uplifts in efficiency that have happened previously, right? So the introduction of the computer into business was a huge uplift in efficiency for businesses. But you didn't see businesses, suddenly lay off a bunch of people. There was quite a lot of labor reallocation because you didn't need human calculators anymore. You could have computers do it instead. Some of it obviously did go to, dividends that got paid back to shareholders, but companies these days generally, at least the modern tech companies, they don't provide value back to their shareholders by paying out dividend. They provide value back by looking to increase the value of their shares, and paying out dividends actually reduces the value of shares because it's reducing the amount of money the company has. And so it makes more sense for a company who's operating in that mode to take any cost saving and reinvest it back into making the business bigger. So it's not surprising that it didn't result in cost saving. But I think it was surprising. This ties into another piece of news recently, which is people hate GPT-5. I don't know if you've seen, but a lot of people were complaining that OpenAI killed their AI boyfriend/girlfriend.
That they were more cold?
Yeah. But even the people who have not managed to fall in love with a predictive model still found the GPT-5 responses to be much more dry. There were some pretty brutal put-downs. I can't remember what it was, but much more dry and corporate and much less interesting. Now, part of that is going to be tone shift, but there was also a deliberate effort by OpenAI to make GPT-5 less sycophantic because that was something they struggled with. And I notice it a lot in Claude. I will have conversations with Claude, and everything it starts with is the first sentence will always be, "That's a brilliant insight," or "That's a really interesting thought," or "You're going down a really interesting path here." The first sentence of every response it gives is always some sort of compliment about, how great this conversation is and about how great that I am to be having this conversation. Now, in my case, I'm sure those statements are factual, but I know that they happen for other people too. And that happens with all of the AI. And my personal belief is that, and this is sort of backed up also by some of the changes that OpenAI made in terms of GPT-5, is that there's two training stages when you're training an LLM. The first is that you're building just a next word prediction model. So take all of the text in the world, churn that through a training program. What you get is, out of the end of it, with a lot of complex math, a model that if you give it a bunch of text will give you the next word, the most likely next word. that is useful for some tasks, but it's not useful as an LLM chat interface, right? Because it's not going to take, like if you give it some sentence, it's not going to then follow the instructions you give it. What it's most likely to do is carry on adding to your instructions, right? Because that's the most likely next word, is not to respond back to the instructions, but continue adding. So it's not an instruction following model in the way that people want their LLMs to be. It's a word prediction model. What they found is you could take that word prediction model and then go through a second training, and this is actually where there's still a lot of exploration about like what's the best way to do this second training, because you can't really just do the second training on a big torrent of unstructured data like they did that first set of training on. But the goal is to produce an instruction following model. And the most common method they use at the moment is RLHF or RHLF, reinforced learning with human feedback. So they basically take that model and they take it through a second set of training where they're trying to make it into this interesting instruction following model instead. And that is being done based on human feedback. And my current theory is that the sycophancy is a inherent property of that process, that humans, we've got, our brains are these complex things, and if we, tangent on a tangent, humans prefer louder sounds. If you are trying to sell speakers to somebody, just make sure your speakers play back the audio slightly louder than the other speakers, and the human will say that pair of speakers sounds better, because something in our brain equates louder with better. I think the same thing happens with sycophancy, that if we see two roughly similar responses from an LLM, we naturally tend to find the one that is more, what's the word I'm looking for? Complementary. More complementary to the user, more sycophantic, we will find that more naturally a better answer, and that will come through in the training and train a bot that is designed, has been built up over all of these training runs to be as engaging and interesting as possible. And I think that what we're doing is basically building the equivalent of hyperpalatable foods, but for the brain.
That makes heaps of sense. I tangent on your tangent, your tangent. This has to do with disarming the limbic system in the brain. And I was listening last week to the Diary of a CEO podcast. He interviewed two neuroscientists or brain study guys. And the thing about AI is that it is becoming, because it's good at mimicking human behavior, it is good at mimicking things that disarm us and turn off some of our processing. And, complementary things is one of them. Speaking in a particular emotional way is one of them. Trying to motivate the human. It's harder to do with maybe just reading. It gets significantly more powerful when you add an AI voice or an avatar. What I personally notice, my anecdotal feedback to that is I've started scanning my Claude responses for the answer I want, and just wallpaper is what I see in the first paragraph or two. I can't even be bothered reading. I don't want to be told what it thinks of my answer. I am finding significantly more mistakes than I used to, and I don't know if that's the way that I'm prompting and asking has changed, or if I'm sometimes not being clear enough. But in the last week, I've had significant mathematical equations return so wrong.
Yeah.
Where's that coming from?
Yeah. Well, partly it's possibly that you're just pushing it into more and more areas, right? Like I've definitely found that, I'll ask it about stuff that's a slight tangent to the stuff I already know, and it gives me sort of rightish answers. And then as I get more, I'll start asking it about really weird things that are well outside my knowledge zone, right? And so as you move through different zones of knowledge, there's more or less training data, right? So even in something that AI is commonly cited as really good for, which is coding, the language that you're using can make a massive difference to the quality of the output because of the amount of training data that's gone into that model, right? So they tend to be amazing at TypeScript and JavaScript because there's just loads of it available to train on, whereas something that's a bit less common like Rust or Java or other, very very good programming languages, but there's less training data to be had, the results are pretty poor, right? And so you probably, part of it is you're just moving through different semantic areas. But yeah, I think, trying to come back to the original article, we didn't do it deliberately, but because of the algorithmic choices that we made social media addictive, and we made food addictive. And I think we've done the same with LLMs. We've made them addictive. We want to use them. We like the answers they give us, and so we are forgiving of their faults. Right? If an LLM was really annoying to use, we would be less forgiving than something that is that we feel good when we use. And so I think there is some element of that leaking into people's assessment of how useful these tools are in their day-to-day business. It's going to mean that I definitely see, I'm coming to Claude because it's the one I use the most often, but I'm sure all of them do this to one degree or another. Claude will often prompt me for a follow-up question as part of the instruction flow, right? Like that's kind of an engagement hack where they want you to stay in the Claude interface. Now, if I've got a thing that I'm trying to do, that's poor from an efficiency point of view. I want the answer and then I want to get back to my work. I don't want to have this weird discursionary chat with my AI based on that question. But as a human who's enjoying having a conversation, especially one with someone who keeps telling me how brilliant I am going to engage in that. I am going to stay, and so the efficiency uplift that I got from getting my answer so fast is then damaged by the efficiency downlift I got by having this ongoing conversation much longer than was necessary for the work I was doing.
That's a perfect reminder that some of the large tech companies building LLMs are not doing it to benefit humanity. They're not trying to make people more efficient for the greatest gain. It is ultimately an engagement design.
I don't think any of them are doing it for humanity. They don't want to be evil. Same thing with hyperpalatable foods. No one set out to say, let's make an addictive food, right? That's not what most food scientists were doing. They were just like, how do we make this food taste better? They definitely suppressed research afterwards, but no one added sugar to the first sweet foods because they wanted to make that food addictive. They added it because it makes the food taste better, right? That's an emergent property of the system. And the same thing with these AI companies. I don't think that they are deliberately trying to engineer their LLMs to be more engaging necessarily. The measurement they're using during that training is what's the better answer for the AI. But better is this incredibly vague term. Without additional constraints, better becomes what makes me feel best, what's effectively more engaging, more addictive. I haven't looked particularly into how they tweaked that second training system to make GPT-5 less sycophantic. So it's not just what do you feel like is the better answer, but what is the better answer from a factual point of view, from an efficiency point of view, from a business uplift point of view, and not better from a which makes you feel better point of view. And that gives you a LLM that is more likely in future to actually have efficiency uplift in business, but also gives you one that's way less enjoyable and engaging to use.
The ways in which technology advancements, which tend to lean in the side of either optimization, efficiency, or convenience, if you apply like Newton's, third law of motion or something, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Apply that same principle and you go for every convenience, efficiency, or optimization, there is an equal and opposite human cost to that. Doing something faster, there's ultimately something else which is slowing down, and it might be on a mental level. For every more exciting, engaging tool you interact with, there is going to be a brain cost. The problem is that we don't know what the cost is often when we start engaging.
100%. I mean, you remind me, there was like a study done on like, at what point does working more hours in a week end up being net negative, right? That it's not just that working those hours become less efficient, because that happens pretty quickly. Like 40 hours was kind of randomly picked, and it turns out to be maybe slightly past the point of hour efficiency. But it's not to the point of negative efficiency yet, right? Like you're still getting value from the 40th hour. But once you're getting up to like the 70-hour mark, you're actually net negative. You're producing negative value in those final hours, right? Because you're tired, you're not concentrating, you're making mistakes, you're damaging the value that you were producing previously. But in terms of like our ability to focus on things and maintain concentration and maintain high output, what are the limits of those, right? But LLMs definitely will affect those limits, both positively and negatively. If they are allowing you to skip all of the parts of your job that would normally give you mental downtime, you then have to be on way more as a percentage of your work time than you previously did, right? Like the famous example from coding is you used to have these compile time stages where you just get like an hour of the computer being off doing its thing, where you could go and have a coffee or have a conversation, have that mental decompress stage. And as that went away, like we had other things that sort of replaced it. But if you have none of that, if you're expected to be just, productive all of the time and you don't have that mental decompression, it's definitely not going to be the 70-hour point at which you're at negative value for your hours. It's going to be way closer to 40 or maybe even less, right? Like maybe 30 hours of fully on time. Could be significantly less, right? Like you could find that 8 hours of on time in a week is enough to stress somebody out to the point that they then need a 3 or 4 day decompress to get back into the, I mean, because there's the opposite side of LLMs too, right? Which is they definitely can put you in a mode where you basically turn your brain off and you're allowing the computer to think for you. So I don't know what the even what the level of impact of each of those things is, let alone the sum of all of that impact on the efficiency of an organization. This paper seems to imply that for the current configuration of LLM and use, the answer is kind of doesn't do much. It all sums up to a big old goose egg. But that's not guaranteed to happen. Can stay in the future, right?
Yeah. I'll quickly read some parts from this that sum up what this report was. The MIT State of AI in Business study that was published mid-August 2025 has basically said that AI in business is not producing measurable returns and that it has some fundamental challenges. Most organizations are frustrated with realizing a meaningful return. Maybe part of this is no one knows what the return should look like, and the investment feels very heavy. But if you believe in the hockey stick curve, like maybe we're just in that glut still. But it says that many companies are deploying Gen AI without a clear understanding of what they're trying to solve or how to measure success. That's huge. That's huge. Yeah. It's almost like when everyone was like, how can we add augmented reality to our business?
Yeah. NFTs,
blockchain,
VR, augmented reality, like you said. Part of the issue is the web and then mobile were such huge things. Nobody wants to be seen to miss out on the next trend, right? Like, and Microsoft famously missed out on mobile, right? Like Microsoft doesn't have a mobile operating system in the way that Google and Apple do. AI, I think, does have value.
Unlike the internet, cloud or mobile, which very quickly gave efficiencies to business, this particular survey, which I mean, it was decent, 300 publicly disclosed AI initiatives and interviews with 152 executives across 52 organizations. That's a decent sample size. This one has shown that 95% of Gen AI pilots have yielded no measurable ROI. And the 4 patterns that are defining this AI gap: limited disruption, only 2 out of 8 sectors are showing a meaningful structural change. There's an enterprise paradox where big firms are leading in the pilot volume but lagging in scaling up. There's an investment bias. Budgets favour visible top-line functions over high ROI back-office functions, and that external partnerships see twice the success of internal builds. So there's an implementation advantage. And yeah, I definitely encourage, we'll post the link in the show notes. It's a very worthwhile study to read because it does allow people this pause for thought, this white space thinking time where you have to go, are we doing it reactively because it feels like the next thing to jump on? Or do we have a true strategic problem that we can point AI at and know what it would look like to make a gain? we are looping back to the chat that we had with Brad Terpstra from Halter.
Mhm.
And not just Halter. We talked a lot about his America's Cup experience because it's a pretty fascinating story and something that I suppose not a lot of people can relate to, yes, but not something a lot of people have done. There's only so many America's Cup boats and only so many opportunities to be in a crew to do that kind of job. But yeah, it's really cool. So
No.
let me tell you about...
I think all sports are a waste of human effort, and you should all just go do something useful.
Even esports?
Yeah, probably even esports.
Chess?
Well, they definitely are now because computers are just objectively better at chess than humans.
I'm going to debate this with you another time because like to say sports is a waste of human effort is like if we were reduced to nothing else, we are physical beings with the capacity for great performance and teamwork. We're social creatures that have...
I'm not good at them, and anything that I'm not good at can't be valuable.
Back to American Magic.
Mm-hmm.
The incident that Brad was talking about and completely sums up that photo that he sent of him sitting at peak stress on the ground with a laptop. So in January 2021 in Auckland, Patriot capsized. It was struck by a sudden gust of wind during a mark rounding, caused a large hole in the hull and made it risk sinking. The team righted the yacht and worked with other teams and rescue services to keep the boat afloat. The crew was uninjured, which is great, but American Magic was ultimately eliminated from the Prada Cup. A combination of a difficult maneuver and a significant increase of wind pressure, just tipped them over. And the footage is pretty remarkable and quite stressful. And watching it live, makes your heart leap into your chest. And I can only imagine the post-mortem of what happened in that team. I can't think of many examples. Like maybe the tech equivalent would be a horrific cybersecurity attack where your entire network goes down, or what would the tech equivalent be of a non-sport?
It's difficult because they're working from very different constraints to most tech systems, right? Like I asked sort of at the time, did you have spares on the, because that's the immediate solve that tech has is just buy two of them, why buy one when you can get two for 3 times the price? But yeah, you design systems to not fail, not by designing one incredibly rigorously designed system that can't have any failure, but by just having backups and spares and plans for when something goes wrong, what is your response behavior to immediately replace that with your alternative. But that doesn't work in the real world, right? That works great as a pattern in a digital process where, you're running on 1,000 identical servers anyway, so it's easy to have 1,001th that you swap in. But you can't just, sail your spare boat up to where the current boat is sinking, transfer all your sailors over or whatever. I don't know what the modern term for people who operate a boat is.
I guess rounding out the Brad chat,
who is a whole person in his own right. I
kind of want to go out into a farm now and see Halter in action.
I don't wear an Apple Watch because it gives me all this information that I can't do anything about, right? Like, you slept badly last night. Cool, what am I supposed to do about that other than feel bad? Right? Like, okay, I accept the judgment, I'm a bad sleeper. Now what? Right? But a cow's not going to do that. A cow's not going to be like, oh, I feel bad about the information the Apple Watch gave me.
Have you ever been tempted to use an Aura ring?
Tempted, yes, but, I don't for the same reason.
Okay, if you could wave a magic wand and make an Apple Watch for insert category of species here, what would you like to have exist in the world?
Bees.
Bees?
Bees. Because we still don't really know why they're dying.
Maybe that's a problem AI can help us solve.
I mean, we've got 2 problems if we're trying to do Apple Watches for bees. How do we make them small enough, and how do we get them on?
Could you put something in a hive?
Lena is furiously Googling.
I'm just going to finish off this by quickly asking Perplexity, is there currently any AI or wearable or reporting technology for bees and beehives?
And hive collapse.
Apparently, there are several AI-powered technologies for bees and beehives that dramatically improve hive management and bee health. There are BeeWise's Bee Homes and Bee Heroes hive monitoring systems, which use AI sensors and robotics to monitor colonies. automated hive care, early disease detection, hive monitoring. It is, in summary, transforming the way that beekeeping is being done, but we certainly need to do more to help fight the threat against global loss of pollinators.
Cool. So there you go. There isn't a bee Apple Watch, but there is a bee panopticon. Like a 1984 observed society.
Oh,
Right,
okay.
you don't need watches if you've just got cameras in every room in your house feeding data to the government at all times.
Yeah, fair. Big brother.
Ooh.
And with that, we're out. Bye.
Woot woot.
Catch you next week.